The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Gaetz, for 5 minutes.
Impeachment nostalgia always warms my heart, but we are here focused on a weaponized government, a whole-of-government approach that has been turned against the American people. And while Rudy Giuliani may have been running around with the laptop in 2020, what is an indisputable fact is that the FBI had the laptop in 2019. And it appears that the last round of questioning misses the boat, that it's true. The information is authentic. The pictures, the videos, the emails, there hasn't been a single allegation that there is a single doctored email. Unlike what we saw before the FISA courts, where the FBI itself was doctoring emails to try to smear President Trump. But I have to get to a question I'm amazed hasn't been asked of the two of you. This FTC consent decree, where it is government action subject to rigorous scrutiny under First Amendment standards, government action demanding that your names be listed. How did it feel when you found out that you were being expressly targeted by a government document based on your reporting?
It was chilling. I mean, it's disturbing. I never thought that would happen in the United States of America, to be perfectly honest. I've lived in a bunch of authoritarian countries. I've visited a lot of authoritarian countries. Never thought this kind of thing would be going on here.
And the nexus to authoritarianism is the desire to control the nature of truth itself. Our understandings change about things. We learn new things. We challenge prior assumptions. But if a bunch of people in Washington, D.C. get to decide what the truth is, and then enforce it on the country, and then punish and target those who report on their conduct, we are drifting more toward that. How did you feel, Mr. Taibbi, when you saw your name?
I was upset, obviously. I lived in Russia during the 90s and early 2000s. I was there when Putin took power. I was friends with a group of very brave, muckraking reporters in Russia, many of whom didn't make it. A few of them were murdered after Putin came to power. So I've always been conscious of how the risks that other reporters take in other countries are incredibly severe, and that's one of the reasons why I'm motivated to protect the First Amendment, because our country has the best protections for reporters in the world. But this kind of thing, where the government is looking for information about reporters, it's usually a canary in the coal mine that something worse is coming in terms of an effort to exercise control over the press. And so on that level, it's absolutely disturbing. Also, the Aspen Institute report that we published today, talked about today in the Twitter Files thread, one of their recommendations was that the FTC be empowered to have unlimited power to search all data of private companies so that they could more freely and more accurately search the speech of ordinary citizens.
So as we're trying to put downward pressure on the government's expanding authority to be able to engage in what we see mostly from dictatorships, what you're reporting and what you're observing is that actually they view this as a growth industry, the information business, right? This yes. Censorship industrial complex is a growth industry to the government.
I think the key thing also, yes, and the thing to understand is that NSF...
What is NewsGuard, and how are they part of the censorship industrial complex?
Yeah, and by the way, we talked about Richard Stengel. He's on the board of NewsGuard. NewsGuard and the Disinformation Index are both U.S. government-funded entities who are working to drive advertiser revenue away from disfavored publications and towards the ones that they favor. This is...
Now, you know, what I'm used to in this town is government officials pick their favorite outlets and they give them the best scoops and they give them the best stories. And there's a fusion of media and government that has long made me uncomfortable. But what you're describing now is literally the directing of revenue to certain media companies over other media companies designed and implemented with U.S. government funding and support.
That's right.
That is an astonishing, if we do not take a look at NewsGuard, we have failed. And you talk about the brave reporting that occurs and what it subjects you to. I would suggest there's also political bravery that I have observed. While we've only heard from Democrats on this panel attacking you, discrediting you, a lot like they've tried to attack and discredit FBI whistleblowers who are truth tellers, There are brave Democrats who still believe in free speech, and I would advise my colleagues to look at the comments of Ro Khanna, who has been deeply, deeply concerned about this weaponization of government, and he believes these Twitter files are indeed worthy of our focus and our energy, and that is exactly what we are going to do. I yield back.
In previous Congresses with Democrats, to protect what we see them trying to do today, protect journalists from having to reveal their sources to government. That used to be a shared position in the Congress. Unfortunately, as we're seeing now, multiple occasions, it's not the position anymore. Mr. Schellenberg, I want to go to Twitter Files Part 7. I related a lot of what you put in there in my opening statement. And I want to give you as much time as you want, because I'm going to read the very first sentence, because something jumped out at me when I read the first sentence. In Twitter Files number 7, the FBI and the Biden laptop. You say this: how the FBI and intelligence community discredited factual information about the Biden foreign business dealings both after and before the New York Post revealed the contents of his laptop on October 14th, 2020. And what kind of jumped out at me was the way you framed it, because you did it backwards from what it's normally said. Normally you would say, the sentence would read, foreign business dealings both before and after. But I assume you did that for a reason, because in fact, I think the next sentence, you say social media companies discredit leaked information about Hunter Biden before and after. You use the normal, customary way in the second sentence, but the first sentence strikes me as you were trying to emphasize the before component of that statement. And I want you to just walk us through why you said that, because when I read it, it certainly was an operation both before and after, as you said, after and before.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Reading through the whole sweep of events, I do not know the extent to which the influence operation aimed at pre-bunking the Hunter Biden laptop was coordinated. I don't know who all was involved, but what we saw was, you saw Aspen and Stanford many months before then saying, don't cover the material in the hack and leak without emphasizing the fact that it could be disinformation. Okay, so they're priming journalists to not cover a future hack and leak in the way that journalists have long been trained to, with in the tradition of the Pentagon Papers, made famous by the Steven Spielberg movie. They were saying, cover the fact that it probably came from the Russians. Then you have the former general counsel to the FBI, Jim Baker, the former deputy chief of staff to the FBI, both arriving at Twitter in the summer of 2020, which I find what an interesting coincidence. Then when the New York Post publishes its first article on October 14th, it's Jim Baker who makes the most strenuous argument within Twitter. Multiple emails, multiple messages saying this doesn't look real. There's intelligence experts saying that this could be Russian disinformation. He is the most strenuous person inside Twitter arguing that it's probably Russian disinformation. The internal evaluation by Yoel Roth, who testified in front of this committee, was that it was what it looked to be, which was that it was not a result of a hack and leak operation. And why did he think that? Because the New York Post had published the FBI subpoena taking the laptop in December of 2019, and they published the agreement that the computer store owner had with Hunter Biden that gave him permission after he abandoned the laptop to use it however he wanted. So there really wasn't much doubt about the provenance of that laptop. But you had Jim Baker making a strenuous argument. And then, of course, you get to a few days after the October 14th release, you have the President of the United States echoing what these former intelligence community officials were saying, which is that it looked like a Russian influence operation. Yeah. So they were claiming that the laptop was made public by a conspiracy theory. And the conspiracy theory that somehow the Russians got it, and they convinced Yoel Roth that they convinced him of this wild hack and leak story, that somehow the Russians stole it, got the information, gave it to the computer store, and it was bizarre. So you read that chain of events, and it appears as though there is an organized influence operation to pre-bunk.
Why? Why do you think they could predict the time, the method, and the person? Why could the FBI predict it?
Not
only did they predict it, They predicted it. So did the Aspen Institute. Seemed like everyone was in the know saying, here's what's going to happen. We can read the future. How do you think they were able to do that?
I think the most important fact to know is that the FBI had that laptop in December 2019. They were also spying on Rudy Giuliani when he got the laptop and when he gave it to the New York Post. Now, maybe the FBI agents who were going to Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook and to Twitter executives and warning of a hack and leak, potentially involving Hunter Biden, maybe those guys didn't have anything to do with the guys that had the laptop. We don't know that.
I know.
But I have to say, as a newcomer to this, as somebody that thought it was Russian disinformation in 2020, everybody I knew thought it was Russian. I was shocked to see that series of events going on. It looked to me like a deliberate influence operation. I don't have the proof of it, but the circumstantial evidence is